Something that I've noticed with this whole discussion around the, attempted coup or insurrection attempt at the Capitol, on January 6th is a lot of these people feigning outrage and clutching their pearls while being huge advocates of regime change abroad. Case in point, look at this article. While railing against Trump coup, Biden appoints chief Ukraine coup-plotter Victoria Nuland. Uh, yeah, Biden's really stacking his cabinet with some really shitty people if you're concerned about, uh, you know, domestic policy here in the U.S. going towards a more left or progressive way, as well as our empire abroad. Describing it as one of the darkest days in American history, President-elect Joe Biden denounced Wednesday's spectacular assault on the Capitol building in D.C. as a coup attempt fomented by Donald Trump. I wish we could say we couldn't see it coming, but that isn't true. We could see it coming, the 76-year-old Delawarean said. The last 4 years, we've had a president who's made his contempt for democracy, our Constitution, our rule of law clear, and everything is done. He unleashed an all-out assault on the institutions of our democracy from the outset, and yesterday was a culmination of that attack. This is not dissent, it's disorder, it's chaos, he added, calling the events an unprecedented assault on the very fabric of U.S. democracy. What democracy? Really? I mean, we don't live in a fucking democracy. You shit me? You gotta have some nice swampland I'd like to sell you if you really think the U.S. is a democracy or ever has been, for God's sakes. I mean, Jesus Christ. Put down the put down the drink or whatever. Put down the potion. I mean, for God's sakes, we're not a democracy. How can you have a democracy when we have massive amounts of money in politics? Is that a democracy? That's more like an oligarchy. Yeah, almost at the same time as the future president was announcing Trump's coup attempt, he was appointing Victoria Nuland, the driving force behind the 2014 insurrection that overthrew the Ukrainian government of Viktor Yanukovych, as his new undersecretary for political affairs. So more regime change efforts and attempts coming, I'm sure. Victoria Nuland was the driving force in the U.S. orchestrated coup in Ukraine, was caught discussing who would be installed as the head of state, and is the wife of Iraq War ideologue Robert Kagan. No matter who's in office, Democrat, Republican, the neocons managed to stay in power. The United States and NATO had been making overtures to Ukraine for some time before the coup, hoping that the country would become the latest post-Soviet state to fall into their fold as they continue to expand eastwards. Yanukovych, however, was in favor of steering Ukraine in a more Russian-friendly direction. Nothing wrong with that. Literally neighbors with Ukraine, right? You kind of want to have a friendly direction or relationship with them. Same with the US, with Canada or Mexico. Obviously should be extending that to Cuba as well. Decision spurred demonstrations across the country from pro-EU forces. The Obama admin immediately sensed an opportunity, sending Nuland across the world to lead and support the movement. Senior diplomat rallying protesters was even photographed handing out cookies in the streets. I'm assuming that's her then. Yay, here's some cookies. Support our EU and NATO-backed coup attempt, please, Ukrainians. While in the West, the revolt was presented as being led by tech-savvy, forward-thinking students. In reality, most of the muscle was supplied, by like the Azov battalion, was supplied by neo-Nazi militias who helped force through Yanukovych's downfall and continue to hold an oversized role in Ukrainian politics and society. In December, the U.S. and Ukraine were the only two nations to vote against United States UN measure combating glorification of Nazism, neo-Nazism, and other practices that contribute to fueling contemporary forms of racism, racial discrimination, xenophobia, and related intolerance. This was done as they felt the resolution can be used to target the Ukrainian government and the U.S.'s continued funding of it. This is who the U.S. propped up and was in bed with in this Ukrainian coup and continues to help out. I mean, look at this fucking vote at the UN. Jesus Christ. Leaked phone calls show that Nuland and American ambassador to Ukraine, Jeffrey Pyatt, had long conversations about who should make up the post-coup government. Events of early... I'm going to just go read it like this because I feel like that orange makes it harder to follow along if you're just listening. That's cool too. Events of early 2014 spooked Russia so badly that it flew troops into Crimea to annex the territory. The affair led to increasing tensions between the U.S., Ukraine, and Russia and almost led to a hot war between the two nuclear-armed countries. In the end, Obama refused to escalate tensions to that point, angering many in Washington. So that was one of the few good things Obama did. Among them seemingly was Nuland, who promised to, again, be a Russia hawk. As Politico wrote this week, she has been an outspoken critic of President Trump's foreign policy, particularly his appeasement of Russian President Vladimir Putin. In reality, however, Trump was extremely bellicose with Moscow, sanctioning the country, bombing a Russian base in Syria, and letting a number of anti-nuclear treaties expire, much to the Kremlin's consternation. Here we go, look. Some of the fine folks that the U.S. propped up in this coup attempt. When the far right storms government buildings where D.C. wants a coup, Dems call them pro-democracy protesters, even if they hang Confederate flags. Biden cheered them in Ukraine and honored some at an NED event called From Protest to Politics, honoring Ukraine's new Democrats. I believe that's kind of a white nationalist, white supremacist symbol. There you see the Confederate flag in the background. Biden's regime change agenda. Well, Vice President Biden's administration also oversaw the 2009 overthrow of the democratically elected president of Honduras, Manuel Zelaya, aiding in his ouster and replacement with a brutal military dictatorship that continues to rule the country to this day. In her memoir, former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton boasted that she helped render the question of Zelaya moot. She did so by blocking action from regional bodies like the OAS. Wednesday's events also resemble a number of U.S. planned coups d'etats, including that of Venezuela in 2002. With help from the American Embassy in Caracas, right-wing and far-right forces marched on the Miraflores presidential palace, joining up with sympathetic military units to storm the building and capture President Chavez. In the melee, dozens of people were killed and Chavez was overthrown, replaced by a well-known businessman with no political experience. The White House immediately welcomed what it euphemistically calls a change in government. 2 days later, the coup was reversed by a huge popular uprising. 2018, Mint Press reported that American far-right white nationalist groups receiving training from precisely the same Ukrainian neo-Nazis that the U.S. government had tutored. Those far-right groups were out in force at the Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville, Virginia in 2017 when they killed a counter-protester. Thus, it is eminently possible that many of those storming the Capitol building on Wednesday were taught insurrectionary tactics from individuals trained to do so on behalf of the U.S. empire abroad. Classic case of blowback, an event that allows Americans to experience a tiny taste of what has wrought in the world for several decades. Yeah, again, pearl clutching, outrage, when people, were describing what happened at the Capitol January 6th, but very vigorously cheering on these coup attempts, these regime change efforts abroad, even propping up neo-Nazis and fascists in Ukraine. And look, Biden appoints chief Ukraine plotter Victoria Nuland. So I guess it's not okay to plot coups and insurrections here in the U.S., but we support it all over the globe. And as McLeod points out in this article, it's blowback. It's chickens coming home to roost. And I doubt many of these liberal democratic types will have any type of change of heart with regards to this, but I mean, it's interesting, the lack of any type of real consistency on this stuff from people like Nuland or any other of these liberal hacks. Like the video if you like the damn video, subscribe for more content. Peace, much love.